Hello, everybody. I'm so glad you've decided to join me today. I'm Nancy Bronstein, and I am a PFAFF educator. And for the next hour today, we're going to be talking about the Quilt Expression 720, which is a really nice machine, especially for quilters, but sewers of all types. So I'm going to show you a little picture of it here. I have my cameras set so they're doing close-ups, so I'm going to just show you the picture of what it looks like from afar. The 720 is on the left and the 710 is on the right. They are very similar machines. However, the 720 is a step up, so it has a lot of features that the 710 does not have. And I will try to remember to mention that as I'm talking about the 720, what's not in the 710, as well as hopefully by the end to talk a little bit about the performance icon, which is a big step up from the 720. I know when I'm just trying to decide on a relatively large purchase, I want to look at all the different models available. Something that's a model smaller or less sophisticated or less expensive, and one that's got all the bells and whistles, and see what is really the sweet spot for me. But the 720 is a sweet machine, and I'm going to try to give you an in-depth overview of it. I really love this machine. It has a lot of really, really beautiful stitches and some really nice features. Like I said, both for regular sewers, like garment sewers, but also for quilters, of course. Since it is a quilt model, it does come with a 1/4-inch piecing foot as well as a free motion foot, and then a nice assortment of other feet too. I think that there's 10 in total, if I remember correctly. Now the 710 is also a nice machine. It is about the same. It is actually the same size and has the same size screen, but it has half the number of decorative stitches. And there are specialty programs I'm going to review with you that it does not have, or specialty functions. So first of all, I'm sure most of you, if you're PFAFF owners, probably most of you are very familiar with the IDT, our integrated walking foot. So that is over here on the side. Whenever you need a walking foot, you just pull this down and it locks into place. This is not a walking foot. So that's why the foot popped off. But when you need it, you pull it down, it's in place, and then you give it a little tug, let go, and it's back up where it stays when you don't need it. So it's always there when you need that help in moving the fabric together. When you have that walking foot and you have two pieces of fabric, let's see how I can show this. You have two pieces of fabric laying against each other. The walking foot keeps them being sewn together like this instead of ending up with your fabric like this by the time you're done sewing, because your foot is moving the fabric forward, and the walking feet are moving the, let me start again. Your feed dogs are moving the bottom fabric forward, and the walking foot will move the top fabric forward, so they stay together, which is a nice thing. Particularly if you're trying to match up fabric, like have plaids that match when you open up the seam. Also, when you're quilting and piecing, you want your pieces to end up like this, not like that. So that's the IDT. Then when we go over to the screen, I'm going to start to go over the different functions with you. So it has I believe the screen is about a 3.5-inch screen, and it is color. And it comes with a stylus. That's how it likes to be interacted with, is the stylus. And it has, I think 400 or so stitches. Your stitch menu is available when you touch this icon that has like 2 lines of dashes. When I open that up, I start to see some of my stitches. Down here, this tells me the number category and the name. And I'm going to touch that so I can explain that a little bit more thoroughly. So like I said, there's hundreds of stitches, and they each have a category number and a name. And the name gives you a clue into how you would use them. So this is the first category, but within the first category, you have these subcategories. So you have 1.1, which is essential stitches like straight stitch and zigzag, and then 1.2, if we open that up, you'll see we have these stitches that look a lot like serger stitches to keep your fabric from your seams from fraying. And then we can go on to the last category in the last subcategory in the first category, which is your eyelets. Now, we have these 5 that you see right here, and as I said, they each have subcategories, but there are even more if you touch the right arrow. We have many, many beautiful stitches in here. So that's how you will go and find your stitches that you depending upon what your project is, you can peruse all these different categories and subcategories. And also a little clue, if you are doing a project and say the project says to load stitch 2.1.13, that would be the second category, the first subcategory, number 13. So it would be this stitch. So sometimes PFAFF directions will go by the numbering system. So again, we're in the second category, the first subcategory, and then the 13th stitch. So that's 2.1.3, and it shows you right on the screen. Once you load the stitch, it also tells you what foot is recommended. That symbol indicates that it's recommending that you use the IDT, the walking foot. And this symbol indicates that it feels that you really should use some stabilizer. And believe me, I have learned the hard way. When that's there, you want to put some stabilizer underneath there, or your stitches will not be uniform. Then this is your free motion icon. If you probably wouldn't free motion with this stitch. Let's go back to our straight stitch. If you touch the free motion icon, you will choose the foot that you have you prefer to use for doing free motion quilting. We have a variety of different feet that you can use. The one that comes with it is the Sensormatic free motion. And what that will do is it'll set things properly for that type of foot, because some like this one has a spring and this one has a spring, but this one doesn't. So it's going to set the tension and various things in the background differently depending upon what foot you choose. And it will also drop the feed dogs. Then moving along with these symbols, if I were, say, a person that I always, for some reason, I don't like a 2.5 straight stitch. I always quilt with a 2.0 in length. I could set it to 2.0. Then I can go to this heart and I can save that as a stitch, so that whenever I want to do my straight stitch, I go to my heart and I can load it from. No, I don't want to replace it. I want to load it. Okay, saved. Yes, we saved it. Oh, because I've already loaded it. Let's change it a little bit and then go in and choose that stitch. Okay, I'm running into some technical difficulties right here that I'm obviously missing a step. Anyway, this is where you can save your stitches that you've created in the past. Let's see if we can load that one. Nope. Okay. Well, I went astray there. So let's forge ahead here. So we have the place where you save your stitches, and obviously I need to take a look at the directions on how to load them. This next icon is one where you can choose that, and you will set your stitch up so that it will tie off in the beginning, tie off at the end, or cut your thread. So if I choose this and then I choose the cut, well, I wouldn't want to cut to begin with. Then I go to my needle here and do some stitching. What it's going to do very first thing is it tied off. It did 3 or 4 quick little stitches to tie off, and then it's going to then do your straight stitch. And if I had touched this icon, then it would at the end tie off like it did in the beginning. then when we, and by the way, if you ever forget what these icons do, like these symbols don't mean a thing to you, you can go to the question mark and then touch the icon, and it will give you information about what that icon does. So that question mark is really, really handy. I sew on a lot of different sewing machines, and when they don't have that question mark functionality, I really miss it. I really miss it a lot, because sometimes you want a really quick, succinct answer to what that thing does. So you just touch the question mark and touch the icon, and it tells you what it does. Like, this is our different programs. So when we go down to, this is different programs that you can set up. So say I wanted to do, I was doing some sort of quilting or decorative stitch design where I wanted to stitch out a certain stitch like 3 times and then have it stop. So I'll show you what I mean. I'm going to go in and choose something that's a little easier to see on the camera. So we've got this kind of bold cross stitch, cross shaped stitch. If I go into my patchwork program here, then what I can do is I can set it up so that it will stitch, say, 3 or 4 stitches and then stop every time. So I'm going to go back to my needle here, and I'm going to stitch two of those crosses. So I stitched 2 of those crosses while I had that chosen. Now, the next thing I do is I need to touch the reverse button, and it's going to stitch 1 more. And now on my screen, I have this ×3. So what I can do is, if I wanted 3, I'm good to go. I can press the start stop button and it'll do 3. If I wanted to do 2, I can touch the minus sign, and now it should stitch out 2 of these crosses and then stop. Just, I didn't show you. I didn't have the right camera on. There we go. So let's do that again. Okay, so that's the patchwork program where I programmed it to stitch 2 of these crosses and then stop. So that's kind of a handy thing to have, depending upon your sewing habits. Now, the next functionality or icon, function icon down, is this one with the A. And when you touch that, you get into your sequencing, which is kind of like the patchwork program a little bit. I'm going to cut my thread here. Oh, I've got to get out of that function before I can cut the thread. And I'm going to go back to that to go into sequencing. And we have a whole lot of beautiful stitches that are pretty all by themselves, but they're maybe even more interesting when they're combined. If I go into leaves and flowers, maybe I want a flower, and then I want to go back into my stitches and pick up a leaf. So now it will do flower, leaf, flower, leaf. I click OK if I'm happy with it. And I'm going to put my needle down and stitch that out. So I press the stop button, and it will just keep doing flower, leaf, flower, leaf, flower, leaf. But what if you wanted to do flower, leaf, and then you wanted to tie off and cut? What you would do is you go back in your menu, and after the first leaf, let me just make sure this, yes, we have 2. I thought maybe it had gone on to the second leaf because we stitched out to, but we can see that we have two stitches. We have the flower stitch and we have the leaf stitch. And the leaf stitch is selected, and I know that because it's green. So whatever we do next will go down here. If I wanted to change the flower, I would go up, and then I could change that flower if I wanted to. But what I want to do is I want to put a tie off stitch, and then I want to do a scissor. So I touch here for tie off, and then the scissors. And now I've got those two things programmed in, and I click on OK. And now let's see what happens. Put my needle down, press the start stop button. Which is a really nice feature. You know, you may want to do a row of flowers, like to make a little garden, and you don't have to quickly try to stop it before it does the next flower. It will automatically stop at the bottom, and then you bring your needle back up here and do another flower and another flower and another flower. So that the sequencing is really nice. Now, another area that you would use the sequencing in is if you were using one of the fonts. And we're going to go in to do that now to show you the sequencing there. So let's go into, go back to sequencing, and we're going to get rid of, I'm going to touch the trash can here to get rid of the things that I've already programmed. And then go back into my stitches. Okay, now here's my fonts right here, the large A. So we have 4 different fonts in the 720. The 710 has 3 different fonts. So I'm going to choose this outline font. And then I'm going to do my name. So this is a different type of sequencing because we're using fonts. Now, typically, or actually what this is going to do is it's going to stitch out Nancy, Nancy, Nancy. And what I would recommend is that you put a space in at least, so you would differentiate one word from the next. Of course, if you wanted to, you could just do your name once, then do the tie off and the cut. But I'll show you what this will look like when it stitches out. Okay. Now, because I didn't program in a tie off and cut, it made the space, and then it was about to start doing Nancy again. Now, I have done an art project, so to speak, using the fonts with the more of a cursive font. Let's see, let's go back to here. And the script font, let's get rid of Nancy here. Now I got rid of that outline font, and now I've got the script font. Now the script font, not in my mind, does not look so great in all caps. So let's go back and do lowercase. And then a space, and it makes, you know, a very nice like signature type of font. But I took it and used it more to texturize some fabric. So I created a phrase. Let's see if I can get this in the picture. I created a phrase and then just repeated it over and over again. And it's not really to be read. It's more just to create texture on this notebook. And then I put see if I can get this on the camera. I put a embroidery on the front. But your fonts, you could use that just to provide some texture to your fabric. This was actually white fabric to begin with, and I did the cursive font across it and soaked it in black tea, and that's what gave it this. I wanted to give it some kind of like an old look. So that's a fun project to do with your sewing fonts. Sewing fonts are good, I think, great for that kind of thing where you want it to not be really bold. Embroidery fonts are much like you can read them from a distance if they're a big enough font. Sewing fonts are more delicate in general and aren't something that jumps right out at you. There's different fonts for different jobs, and certainly as texturizing, those fonts work really well. Okay, so let's see where we are here. We went through the fonts. And I'm going to get rid of Nancy here and get out of sequencing. Now we come down to Stitch Creator. Now, I should say that the patchwork program where we programmed a certain number of stitches and certainly Stitch Creator are not in the 710. And Stitch Creator is a really interesting tool to work with. So Stitch Creator is this little zigzag kind of symbol down here. So I'm going to touch that. When you get into Stitch Creator, you can create your own design from scratch. So I could decide I want to maybe make my initials in a kind of arty, wonky way. So I'm going to put one stitch there. Then I'm going to put another stitch by touching this symbol. And I can tell which stitch is selected by the one that has the big box around it. I can touch that and I can move it. So I'm going to move this up. Then I'm going to make another stitch. And I'm going to touch that big square and bring it down. And then I'm going to choose another stitch. And then I'm going to bring it up. And so there's my N. Then I'm going to choose another stitch and I'm going to make a B, kind of a wonky B, another stitch, and swing that back to make the top part of the B. And I'm going to drop my stylus. Now we'll choose an, oops, did I move? No, I didn't move that camera. Choose another stitch and bring that down to make the bottom part of the B. And another stitch and swing that over that way. Now, I'm kind of happy with that, but I think this should be just a little bit higher. So I can go back to that stitch by going and touching this up button. And I'm just going to pull that a little bit higher. Then I'm going to go a little further because I don't want this tail sticking out here. So I'm going to bring that stitch. Maybe I'll just erase that stitch. So now I've got my NB. I'm going to want another stitch to kind of space things out in case I want to do NB, NB, and NB. If I were going to just stitch out NB, I wouldn't put that last stitch in there. Now, there is a function beyond that, well, beyond making your own stitches, that is one of the things I love about this machine and the icon that I have. And it's the ability to take many of our stitches and triple them easily. So I've got this NB here. I probably should just show you what it looks like first. So that would be what it looks like if I just stitch it out right now. Now I could program in a stop there, so it's just one NB, but this is what the design would look like. Now, if I go back into Stitch Creator though, I can make this, I can triple this so it'll be a lot more bold. But what I first have to do is select all the stitches that I want tripled. So I'm going to touch here and I'm going to do the up arrow, and you'll see that those white lines are becoming green. That means that they are selected. Then now I have this icon available to me. Before it was grayed out. So I can touch that, and now that's a triple stitch, And you can see that it's much more bold. And I use that all the time. I don't create my own stitches all that often, but I'll show you what I do use it for. I will often go into my stitches and find a stitch I like this stitch here. It's very delicate, and for certain applications, it's perfect. But it may be that I want it to pop more. So I can take this stitch and go into Stitch Creator and got to get rid of that. We need to go, I got rid of my initials. Now I got to go back to my stitches and choose my flower. So I've got my flower there, and actually it's already got all of the stitches chosen because they're all in green because this is lit up. And now I can touch the 3X, click OK. And now you'll see that it's much more bold. So not all stitches can be tripled, but your single stitches like this can be tripled generally. Something like this that's a satin stitch, it will not allow you to triple it. If you choose that stitch and you go into Stitch Creator, let's get rid of this. Go into, choose that. Oh, it's going to let me. What do you know? Some of the stitches that are heavy, it will not allow you to triple them, but it did with this one. I was surprised. So, there's a lot of really nice functionality here that is not in the 710. Now, over here on the side, there are some icons that you may not see very well on the screen, but there is an icon here that looks like it's 2 arrows facing left and right. And what that does is it'll flip your stitch left and right. So watch the stitch while I touch. You'll see it flips one way or the other. Now there's another icon here that has an arrow pointing up and down. And I'm going to pick a different stitch because you're not going to see what that does with that one because I think it'll look the same. So now I'm going to touch the icon that's up and down. So it changes the direction up and down, left and right, and up and down, which is nice. Like sometimes you want a certain effect, and you, by using these 2 icons, you can get a really nice end result. So I'm not getting any questions. I hope you guys aren't all bored. I hope that's just that I'm very clear. And so you haven't been asking questions. So now I'm going to go and I'm going to show you some of the beautiful stitches in the 720. So one of my favorite families is, maybe I can show you some pictures. Hold on one second. So we have a Maxi Art family, and I've stitched some of these out. These are actually stitched out in sewing. They are huge. They are Maxi, and they can be really effectively used for things like home deck and garment making or the border of a quilt, all sorts of things. Can you repeat the triple stitch? I'm being asked. You bet. So we'll come back to the Maxi Art. So going back to our screen here, we first go into Stitch Creator, which is the zigzag down at the bottom. And I'm going to get rid of that stitch. Then you're going to choose your stitch. So you'll go into your stitch menu. So let's try this one this time. So if it looks like that, this is often the way that it will look. It will be, because it was tripled because I'd been tripling before. If you have been tripling before, it will show up as its single stitch self that it typically, that it is in the stitch menu. And so now we don't have any stitches chosen. So in order to triple the stitch, I should have said to begin with, each of these green dots represents 1 stitch. So in order to triple this, we have to select all those dots. So we're going to touch this button, and then it has selected this last stitch. Then we go to the up button, and we will go stitch by stitch and select them all. Or maybe say you don't want to, you just want that stem to be tripled. You could just triple that. So I'll stop here and you'll see what that looks like. So that would be like that, where you'd be tripling that. But let's go back and triple the whole shebang. So I'm up to this point. If I keep going all the way to the top, it will have selected all of the parts of the stitch. And then I'm just going to touch the 3X icon and the OK button. And now it is tripled. And it really will show up so much better. I use this function all the time. Love it. Now, the other thing that I forgot to mention, let's start over again. I'm going to go into that flower again. You can, I don't want it selected. You can go in and change the shape of an existing stitch. Like, for instance, say I don't like those spiky things in the middle. Right now, this stitch is selected. I have to traverse all the way up to these stitches and make them a larger box like that, so I know they're selected, and then I can change those spikes there. So I'm going to just go up. I'm watching that little box go all the way up towards those spikes. Now I got to go around that petal. There. Now, say I don't want those spikes to be as big. I can touch that square and bring it up there. Then I'm going to go up to the other one and get rid of the other spike. So now, because that's a big square, I know it's selected, and I can touch that big square and drag it down to the middle. Now let's see what that looks like. So then you have a different stitch. And I could go back in and make that a triple stitch. Oh, wait. There we go. I skipped that one part, but I don't want to belabor the tripling. Okay, so we've got the stitch creator. Does that make sense now? Okay, so now moving ahead, I'm going to show you one of my favorite stitch families. I'm going to go with, well, there's a few of them, but these Maxi Art stitches are huge. So when you got a lot of territory to cover, they're a good thing to fall back on. So, okay. I don't know why it's grayed out. Okay, so we're in some weird state here. So I'm trying to get to the, here, now it's back again. It was grayed out before. I'm not quite sure why, but we're going to touch it now. And these are those really big stitches. And I want to show you what they look like, because it's just incredible that you can do this in sewing. So I'm going to choose this flower. This is one of my favorites. And I'll start by putting my needle down and then just hit the start stop button. Whoops. As you can see, it's almost sewing itself. I might nudge it a little bit when it looks like it's going a little bit crooked, but otherwise it's just sewing along on its own. And I don't even have the right foot on. I was supposed to put the 8 foot on, which it says on the screen. So I'm not going to repeat it again, but I want you to see how big it is and how pretty. So isn't that lovely? Now, if you go back into that family, this stitch is really good for home dec. you know, you do a whole line of these stitches and it really looks beautiful. So I'm just, again, watching that it's going straight and just nudging it a little bit if it looks like it's going astray. That's not enough. So, I mean, it's just such a lovely stitch to go on the border of something. Okay, so let's see. I've got a question here. I'm going to have to think about that one. So what I was going to say about when you're doing these big stitches is that as you're sewing along, what you'll see, because it is such a wide stitch, is that your fabric goes like this. What you don't want to see it do is go like this. Start to work its way and get more and more crooked. So as it's going side to side, that's all good. And if it goes like this, then you nudge it back like that. And then you'll end up with a good end result. Okay, so that's the maxi stitches. And like I said, they're huge. Some of the biggest one is 52 millimeters, which is pretty amazing. You can do that in sewing. You don't have to switch to embroidery. So beautiful stitches. Now we're going to go to the 8th family, which has so many beautiful stitches. I'm going to show you how to do, first of all, let's do floating stitches. So I'm going to go back into my stitch menu again and go up here, touch the right facing arrow, go to 8. And this is the technique category. And we have 3 different types of stitches here. We're going to do the ribbon stitches first. Now, the ribbon stitches come in 3 forms. There are single ribbon stitches, there are double ribbon stitches, and, oops, I went too far, they're triple ribbon stitches. And when you're looking at it, the triple ribbon stitches, you might wonder, well, what's the difference between these? They look pretty much alike, only one's a little fatter. Well, if you touch the question mark, it will tell you this is for 1/8 inch ribbon. This one is for 1/4 inch ribbon, and they end up being wider. So it depends on how bold you want your stitch to be. But let's go up to the single ribbon stitches. And I have a sample here to show you. Oh, that camera has gone astray. Okay, so let's see if I can get it in this camera. I have one camera that is a little finicky and it just went out of me. I think I'm going to have to stop using it. So these are some of the single ribbon stitches. They are beautiful. You can use satin ribbon. You can use polyester cheap ribbon from a big box store. You can use silk ribbon. This happens to be silk. Silk gives you a flatter kind of end result. Just really beautiful to use on garments and home deck, all sorts of things. So let's see. Got a question here. Can you go over again where to find the maxi stitches? You bet. Okay. So I go back into my stitches here. And I'm going to go back to the 1 through 5 category. And I'm probably going to have to poke around because let's see where, yes, in the 5th category. I got it first try. Yay. So it's a 5th category, and it's 5.4 is the Maxi Art. So just 5, touch that. You're in decorative stitches, and then down at the bottom, the Maxi Art. And somebody says you can't find 6.4. Let's see what 6.4 is. Well, I don't have 6.4 either, so not quite sure where that. Oh, change camera. Okay. Sorry about that. And thank you, Amy. Okay, so I'll start that over again. I was talking to myself because I didn't have the right camera on. So we go into our stitch menu, and you can touch down at any category, and you'll either have 1 through 5. And if you think it's not in 1 through 5, then you touch the right arrow. But the Maxi Art is in the 5th category, and it's down there, 5.4. Now, somebody had asked about where she can't find 6.4. Maybe it's because she's looking for the 5.4. I don't have a 6.4. There may be a 6.4 on the performance icon when you go up a step, but the quilt expression has more stitches than the 710, but many less than the performance icon. But the Maxi Art is in the 5.4 category. Okay, so we were going to do stitches in the 8th category, I believe. Go back, touch there, touch here, and go to category 8. And we're going to do floating stitches first, which is 8.3. Oh no, we were doing ribbon stitches. I started out with floating and then I showed you ribbon, so let's do ribbon. Started talking about ribbon. So we're going to do ribbon stitches, and like I said, there are single, double, and triple. We're going to start with single. Going to start with simple, then get a little more complicated. This is one of my favorite, with a little sort of fleur-de-lis almost at the top. And again, it's going to ask you to use stabilizer, and I do have the right foot on, and I'm going to have to grab some ribbon here. I would say that when you first start doing ribbon stitches, that it's probably best that the easiest width to start out with is probably a 1/4 inch. It's a little more forgiving than 1/8 of an inch, and if you go any wider than 1/4 of an inch, it's not quite as easy. So 1/4 inch is the easiest, and then when you get more skilled, you can go down to 1/8 of an inch if you like. So I have my stitch chosen. And when you see the stitch on the screen, you see this green cross. That's where the needle is going to go down, and it's going to start. And it's going to stitch like that. It's going to go from left to right. Now, with these stitches, with the ribbon stitches, what you want to do is start by putting your needle down, and you don't do anything with the ribbon until you've hit the start-stop button at least once. It's going to do that first angle of stitches and then stop. And do that little decoration. And I should say that these ribbon stitches are program stitches, which means that it's going to stitch a certain number of stitches and it's going to stop in order for you to do something. In this case, it's in order for you to put the ribbon down or to manipulate the ribbon. If you use your foot control, you could stop prematurely and get out of sync. So don't use your foot control. Some people find that so hard to do that what they have to do is they have to unplug their foot control, because they will automatically use the foot pedal. But you do use your start-stop button on the head of your machine. So after we've done that first row of stitches and it stops, because I stopped with my needle down, it will end with my needle down and the foot will be floating. And that means I have room to put my ribbon underneath the foot. If you can't see what's going on, as long as your needle's down, you can touch your foot up button and take a better look, but you will get to the point where you don't need to do that. So once you have your ribbon in place, before it gets tacked down with this first set of stitches, I keep my fingers just like this because I don't want that ribbon to drift away from the side of the needle. It needs to touch the side of the needle or it's not going to look as nice. So once I keep my fingers like this, I'll push the start stop button, and as soon as it bites into the ribbon, I can let go. Now when it stops, it's time to flip the ribbon. And now I don't typically put the foot up, but I'm going to put it up so hopefully you can see on the camera a little bit better. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take this ribbon and I'm going to flip it over like that. So now it is the top part of the ribbon is touching the right side of the needle, the right front part of the needle. And then I'm going to hit the start stop button. And then I'm going to flip the ribbon over, pull it over here, and make sure it touches the side of the needle. And again, I'm keeping my finger in place until it makes one stitch into the ribbon to hold it in place. Now, there are two ways that people typically well, first of all, I should show you what it looks like. It looks like that. There are two ways that people go astray when they're doing these ribbon stitches. They will not do those first few stitches before they put the ribbon down, so they're completely out of sync. Or they will bring the ribbon over and they don't hold it. They let it drift away from the side of the needle. So I'm going to I did a couple that are going to look good. I'm going to do a couple that'll drift and you'll see what the difference is. So now I'm going to flip it over and I'm going to let it drift because I'm going to let it go. Okay, so these two are the way that it should look, where you only see the little embellishment on the sides of the ribbon. You don't see the connecting stitches. However, if you let that ribbon drift away from the side of the needle, you will see those stitches and it does not look good. So see that, see this, I mean, it doesn't look terrible, but it certainly looks better when the ribbon covers up those connecting stitches. So that's the single ribbon stitch. Now I'll show you the double ribbon stitch. Now the double ribbon stitch, you can use two different colors of ribbon, which is kind of nice, gives it a nice effect. So I'm going to go back into my menu and pick a double ribbon stitch. So go back into the stitch menu and let's just choose this one. And now it looks all really complicated. I would say that it is a little bit more complicated than the single ribbon, but after you've done it a couple of times, you'll be a pro. Now, I have a tip for you, but this camera, my one camera's not working. Let me see if I can get it to work again because I'd like to look at you when I am talking. This camera is just kaput, I think. Nope, it's not going to work. Okay, so you're going to have to just bear with my disembodied voice because my camera on my face has stopped working. So, forgot what I was going to say, so we'll forge ahead with the double ribbon stitch. It'll come back to me. Okay, so looking at the stitch, it looks pretty complicated, but you get into a rhythm and then you're fine. So what we're going to do, just like we did the first time, is the very first thing we're going to do is we're going to put our needle down, and we're going to press the start stop button before we do anything with the ribbons. And now, this last time, oh, I remember what I was going to say. We have a cell phone app that goes with the performance icon and with the creative icon. There's all sorts of wonderful videos and tutorials within that machine. And the cell phone app has those videos in it. So if you need a refresher on how to do the single ribbon stitch, double ribbon stitch, and the triple ribbon stitch, you would go to wherever you get your cell phone apps, and you would download, you'd search on PFAFF, then you would download Creator Q, CreatorCue app, and it has all the tutorials that are inside the performance icon and the creative icon. And in the sewing category under exclusive stitches are videos on how to do this stitch, these ribbon stitches, as well as many sewing techniques. And so it's really worth it. It's free, so why not? When you download the app, you do have to sign up for a My SewNet account, which is also free. And that requires creating a password. And if you go to mysewnet.com, after you've downloaded the app, you give me your email address and create a password, and then you have an account. You open up that Creator Q app on your phone and enter your email address and your password you just set, and then the app will always open for you. But they don't want the app just going wild. They want to kind of keep track of who's using it, and they can send you notices when there's updates and that kind of thing. So free app, lots of really good information in it. And also, while I'm talking about it, the performance icon and the creative icon have these wonderful tutorials built into the sewing machine itself with a 10-inch screen like an iPad. Pretty wonderful. So going back to the double ribbon stitch, I have before I started blabbing, I hit the start stop button and did a few stitches down this way. So I did my first stitches. Now with the single ribbon stitch, we went like this. The double ribbon, we're going to go the opposite way. Going to go on an angle from right to left. And I'm going to hold the ribbon against the side of the needle until it gets sewn down a bit, and I let go. Now we have to do the second ribbon. This time we're going to go the opposite way, and I'm going to hold it down like so until it takes a stitch into the ribbon. Now at this point, there's a pattern to it. You're going to, we sewed down the white, and we're going to flip the white over and have it butt up against the side of the needle and press the button, the start stop button. And now we're going to flip we just did the white twice. Now we're going to do the red twice. I'm going to flip this over. So I did the red once and then twice. And now I'm going to do the white once. And then twice. And I'll show you what that looks like. So Amy, that was the tip, the Creator Q app. So here's the double ribbon stitch, and I'll show you a sample of a bunch of them done. So there are all sorts of, using different ribbons, you can get different effects. And does anybody want to see that again? I know it's a little bit confusing on first exposure. And if not, we'll forge ahead to the triple ribbon stitch. Please show it again. Yeah, I thought so. It's confusing at first. That's why that app, the video on that app will really help you out. Creator Q. Okay, so what we're going to do, because I am starting this same stitch over again, there's a very important button to know about on the head of the machine. So on the head of the machine, there is this button. I know it's not clear on your screen, but I'll describe it. It is a triangle facing this way with a minus sign. And what that button does is that's your stitch restart button. We stopped that stitch, who knows where, it was in the middle, and I want to start from the beginning so I get the ribbon started correctly. So I'm going to hit my stitch restart button, and that means I'm going to start right at the beginning, and I'll know when to put my ribbon in. I won't get out of sync. With these ribbon stitches, if you get out of sync, it's really hard to recover without starting completely over again. So I'm going to put my needle down. And just like the single ribbon stitch, I'm going to hit the start stop button first without the ribbons. And now I'm going to take my ribbon and I'm going to put it from right to left. The single ribbon we did left to right, double we do right to left for the first ribbon. And I'm going to hold it down, hit the start button. Now I'll put my second ribbon in, make a cross kind of like that, and I'll hit the start stop button. So I sewed my white down once. Now I'm going to do the second time. From here on in, it's doubles. So I did the I sewed the white twice. Now I'm going to sew the red twice. I'm going to flip it over and pull it under there, under the foot.
Nancy, can you change your camera, please?
Oh, shoot. I am so sorry. Thank you, Amy. Thank you. Boy, I didn't know you could pop in like that. That's really helpful. I'm glad I haven't had to use that before. It means I'm not doing so bad. You haven't had to pop in on me. Okay, we're going to start that from scratch. And I am going to go over a little bit because I haven't used haven't shown you the triple ribbon stitch yet, or the stacking stitches. So hopefully you guys can all stick around. So again, I'm going to hit my stitch restart button. Then I'm going to go to the right camera and I am going to put my needle down and I need to cut some more ribbon. So what stabilizer do you use? Well, it'll depend upon the application of, what this thing is going on. If it were going on a shirt, I'd probably want to use something soft like Whisper Web Mesh, maybe, that's not scratchy. You don't want anything too heavy because you could kind of distort the stitches if you're ripping away some really thick tearaway. It depends on what the project is going to be. We do have Stitch and Ditch stabilizer that's this very thin tearaway. Stitch and Ditch was originally designed to use for quilting. You would draw a design on it, place it on top of the quilt, and stitch your design that you've drawn on the Stitch and Ditch stabilizer, and then tear it away because it tears away very easily. So if you want to tear away for this application, it's a pretty good one. Some stitches it's not thick enough for, but the stitch, I think for this it's a good choice because it's all straight stitches, so it tears away easily and doesn't distort the stitches. However, like I said, if it's inside of a blouse, you might want the Whisper Web Mesh, which feels more like, it's very soft, it's fabricy, so it's very light, and it will prevent the inside of the fabric being scratchy. Okay, so I have my needle down and I'm going to hit the start stop button. And as I have said, and you couldn't see what I was talking about, with the single ribbon stitches, you would put your ribbon like that, but we are going to go the other way for the double. We're going to put it like this. And then hit the start stop button. And now we're going to put the second ribbon from left to right. And those stabilizers are all Inspira, but they are being rebranded as PFAFF. So depending upon your store, they may call it Inspira or PFAFF. So now I had one ribbon going this way and the other one going the other way. Stitch that down. And now from here on, you're going to stitch each ribbon twice before you go on to the next one. So I'm going to take this black ribbon and flip it over, have it butt up against the needle. And I already stitched it down once, so I'm going to stitch it a second time. Now I'm going to flip it over. And this is my first stitching of the maroon. Then I'm going to flip it over for my second stitching of the maroon. So now it's the black's turn. I'm going to flip it over and do its first stitching. And then its second stitching. So you just, if you get started right, you just keep doing each ribbon twice and you'll get a nice end result like that. And okay, so then we'll quickly do the triple ribbon, because how could we leave that out? Triple ribbon, I think, looks really nice on pillows. It's one of my personal favorites. Some more ribbon here. Oh, actually, before I forget, I did want to show you these stitches used in quilting. So I have a table runner here, and I use these single ribbon stitches to decorate this panel here, strip. I use the, oh, I didn't do floating stitches yet. I use the floating stitches to join these two pieces together. And, you know, it just gives it a really nice effect. And so we're going to do the triple ribbon. So these are not just for garments, these techniques. Okay, so I have to go back into my menu and pick a triple ribbon stitch. So I'm going to go to the down arrow, and I'm going to pick that last one because I have 1/4 inch thread here, ribbon. And I'm going to start by putting my needle down, hit the start stop button, and I'm going to take my ribbon and go from left to right and hold it in place, hit the start stop button. Then we're going to go from, we're going to crisscross like so and have it butt up against the left side of the ribbon, needle. And I have a third piece of ribbon here. So I did one left to right, and then one right to left, one left to right, and now I'm going to repeat what I did with the white, with the very first one. So it was white, then the maroon, then the black. Okay, now as I look at it, it's like, okay, what do I do next? What you do is you look and see which ribbon is highest, which is furthest, closest to the back, and that's the one you're going to flip. So I'm going to flip this over and make sure it butts up against the needle. And you don't want this one to drift over and get caught in the stitches. So you kind of hold that one aside. So I keep my fingers like this. So this is butting up against the needle and this is out of the way. Now looking at it, the maroon is higher. It's closer to the back of the foot. I'm going to turn that one, flip that one over and kind of keep these separated. Now, looking at the ribbons, the black is closest to the back of the foot. I'm going to flip that over. Those little decorations kind of get caught on the foot, on the side of the ribbon. And looking at the ribbon, the white is one closest to the back, so I'm going to flip that over. Keep them separated. And let's see what this looks like. Okay, so pretty nice, huh? So this is pretty wide. If you had 1/8 of an inch ribbon, it would be significantly more delicate, but it is a really nice effect, like I said, on home deck. Now, I think I'm just going to have to show you the other stitches and another time. But you can certainly do these stitches. These are these really nice stacking stitches, and the way these are done is each stitch comes in a pair. And say you're doing this bigger flower first, you would put your pink thread in and you would stitch down the row. Then you go back up to the beginning and you load the smaller flower design, and you make sure that, this is key, you make sure your needle goes into the hole where the pink flower started, so that you start it in the exact same space and they will be in alignment, and you'll get this nice design having the two different colors of stacking stitches. And then I'll show you the floating stitches. These might be my favorites. I'm not quite sure that I have so many favorites. The floating stitches are pretty neat because they look like they're floating in air, but there's actually a seam there. Now, there's two different ways to do them. This is done with just the fabric folded, so it's not joining two separate pieces of fabric. However, you can take fabric and stitch, you have the right sides together, and you stitch along the edge here, and when you open it up, you have a seam, and with this nice decorative effect down the seam. Now, I wanted to take more time to present this, but just to whet your appetite, that's how you could do it to make a whole row of like stitch and flip. You could use this to do quilt as you go, and you would do that by you have your two pieces of fabric together, and instead of having stabilizer underneath it, you put batting. Then on the other side, you have two pieces of fabric, right sides together. So two pieces of fabric, right sides together on one side, two pieces of fabric, right sides together on the other, and you stitch down the row. And when you open it up, you have a quilt as you go method that is very decorative. And there is a seam in there. There's a straight seam that's hidden in the crease, sort of in the ditch. So pretty slick, huh? So any last questions? Okay, so they have asked me to let you know about the next Facebook Lives. And there will be a My Sewnet, which is our embroidery design software, live Wednesday, December 14th with Mickey, and she'll be showing you how to use the Family Tree Wizard. The Family Tree Wizard allows you to create a beautiful embroidered family tree with all the different members of your family very quickly and very beautifully. Then the next PFAFF Facebook Live is Thursday, January 6th. And no, that's not right. That was last year. They're telling me I'm doing Minky and Fleece on Thursday, January 6th, but that was last year, Amy. So we will table that. I think there is a PFAFF Facebook Live on the 19th, but I'm not sure of what the topic will be. It will be, however, on the Facebook Live page, on the PFAFF PFAFF Sewing North America page. So unfortunately, I am just, again, this disembodied voice talking to you, but I appreciate you spending an hour with me. If you have any questions after we close today's session, I will be checking the Facebook Live page for about the next week. And all of these videos do eventually make their way to YouTube. And YouTube is such a great resource where you can stop it and start it. And a lot of people don't realize you can go down the settings. And if you have a teacher that goes too fast, you can slow her down. Just slow her right down. You know, you can do it one half speed. And then if you have a really fast talker, like I can be sometimes when I get excited, I will slow down to where you can follow me better. So YouTube's your friend. And again, thank you for joining me today, and happy sewing.